Okay, so welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today as we're celebrating 3 days early, the International Women's Day. So I'm so grateful to everybody who's come out today or anybody who's going to join us yet, and those of you who will get the recording to watch later. So it is my absolute honor today that I'm here with coach and podcaster Terri Kellums, as well as producer and podcaster Will Wise Otero. And we are here to just share some thoughts and feelings and ideas about not only women in general, but as being a human and what it means for us to be able to get through this world together and to look at it from some different perspectives. Even though we're celebrating Women's Day, I thought it also appropriate to have a man with us as well, to share his viewpoint and his side, as well as how he sees things, because that's what we're all here to do, to get along together, to understand each other, to create better sense of communication. And I think that the best way we can do that for all of us is to work together by trying to see things from different perspectives, whether it means as another gender, whether it means a different race, whether it means a different culture. That's why it's International Women's Day, because it's all about celebrating internationally. So that being said, if anybody who is participating with us on all of the different streams we have running, there's those who are on Facebook, and I'm not going to list all the other ones that I have going at the same time. I will try my best to catch any questions that come in and to ask them of our guests as well, and to answer any questions you may ask of me. And through this process, I'm hoping that we're all going to learn a bit together, that we're going to grow together and really get to understand each other a bit more. So if you do have questions, feel free to ask, and I will try to ask them at any period of time during our live cast. And anybody who wants to ask something later, I will make sure to grab those questions and pass them on as well. So let's begin. And today, like I said, I'm so honored that I have these wonderful people who I have had the pleasure of being able to be on both their podcasts and speak with them and get to know them a little bit more. And I want to just say that I was so impressed, with being able to chat with them and being able to understand more about their perspectives, and felt that this would be something that would be so great to share with everybody else. As you may have seen in the promotional material, Terri Kellums, who is a coach, who is a podcaster of What Women Want Today, and who has done such phenomenal work in helping especially women who are in midlife, who are pivoting in their life, who are dealing with different challenges than we deal with when we're in our 20s or younger, or even in our 30s, and being able to understand what some of those challenges are, to address them, and to be able to work through them and see this more as, instead of a halfway point and half our life is over, now a halfway point where we have the best yet to come. So without further ado, I want to say welcome first to both of our guests. Welcome Terri, welcome Wise. Thank you for being here. And let's begin now. Let's talk with Terri. I know she has some wonderful and invaluable information to share. So welcome Terri. Thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for that warm welcome. I want to talk to our audience today about passion and purpose. You mentioned just a few minutes ago that, we do have challenges all throughout our life. Our 20s bring a set of challenges, our 30s bring a set of challenges. But for a lot of women, when they get to that midlife point and their nests are empty, they start questioning a lot of things like, well, what am I supposed to be doing now? What does this next part of my life look like? So I'm really happy to be here today to share a part of my story and to share a little bit about how I work with women in discovering passions and purpose, and ultimately life fulfillment in life. Mm-hmm. So I thought I would start out by just giving you a little bit of my background. I spent most of my career working in the insurance industry. I began working for an agent as his assistant, and he was an incredible man and a wonderful leader. And after just working with him a short time, he said, you need to be an agent. You need to have your own agency. And so with his encouragement and his help, I did. I opened my own insurance agency and worked in it for several years and loved it. I loved helping people, working with people. But then we had our wonderful real estate crash in about 2008, 2009. And I saw my agency and my business shifting. At that time, I had an opportunity to move into the corporate side and move out to Phoenix, Arizona from Illinois. And I spent a lot of wonderful time there, quickly advanced to the operations manager of the call center. And that offered me up the opportunity to, excuse me, earn 2 certifications in call center management and a certification in coaching employee performance. But after doing that for several years, our culture was starting to shift a little bit. Excuse me, it's allergy season. And we were going through some restructure in our division, and it came to the point where I could either reapply for my job or I could accept a severance package and move on. And after a ton of discussion, my husband and I decided it was time for me to pursue something different. And at the time, we had no idea how big that change was about to become. I really didn't know, and I was in midlife at this point. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I really wanted to utilize all of the things I'd learned over the years in the insurance industry, the leadership, the building culture, working as part of a team, and all the things that came along with that role. I just didn't want to start out in a new industry. And I felt very loyal to the company that I'd worked for so long. I didn't really want to go to another company either. So I spent a lot of months after leaving that company just kind of wondering, what am I going to do now? And I was talking to one of my girlfriends one day, and we were talking about all of this. We were talking about how do we take all of our skills and our knowledge and our strengths and apply it to a new role in life. And that led us to becoming certified through John Maxwell as a coach, a trainer, and a speaker. So we went through the program, and at the end of the time, we went off to Florida, spent a week there listening to speakers and going through conferences and just learning a lot of stuff and just being so filled up by being surrounded by people who were kind of in the same boat that we were. And by the time we left there, I had switched from wanting to go out and be a consultant to large corporations and even small businesses. And I said to myself at the end of that, I want to work with women. I want to impact the lives of women. I just didn't know exactly how to do it or what I wanted to help them with. And so all of this was sort of transpiring right about the time that 2 other major events in life were occurring. We were moving from Phoenix, Arizona, where we had family and all of our friends. And we were moving to a remote community, retirement community between Las Vegas, Nevada, and St. George, Utah. There's a little corner where Arizona kind of butts up in there. And there was literally nothing there. And the second thing that I was going through was I was in perimenopause, skeeting towards menopause, and I had some major battles going on inside of me. And there was one battle I wouldn't even recognize until much later, but I was homesick for Phoenix. I missed my corporate job. I missed feeling like I was impacting people's lives. And I really wasn't enjoying my new situation, my new living situation. Also at that same time, the changes going inside my body made me feel like I didn't know who I was anymore. And a lot of women don't know how to reconcile that. So they go inside themselves a little bit. And I hadn't quite figured out who I was outside my former corporate role. I was now an empty nest woman living in a new place, questioning how I got here, who I was and who I wanted to be. So I did a very logical thing. I hopped in my car, loaded up with audiobooks and a music playlist. I really wasn't in the world of podcasting very much at that time, so I didn't have a lot of podcasts ready to go. But I was heading from my little corner in Arizona across country to be with the people who I thought I knew I was when I was around them. And that was my adult children, their husbands, and my little grandbaby. And I remember being in the car, listening to a book by Brene Brown called Daring Greatly. And she was talking about vulnerability. And I remember this moment. I think it'll be etched in my memory for a very long time. I was on this beautiful mountainy road, beautiful sunny day, listening to her talk about being vulnerable. And I had to pull over to the side of the road because I was sobbing, because it was the first time in my life as a middle-aged woman that I realized I didn't know how to be vulnerable until I heard her talking about it. I had never acknowledged the word vulnerable in my vocabulary. And suddenly, sitting at the side of the road in that beautiful mountainy view with the sun shining, listening to this woman talk, I saw a lot of things flashing before my eyes. And the close relationships I desired my entire life, that always just seemed to be out of my grasp, came from my ability that I had a lot of trauma as a child. And the skill that I took away from that was the ability to compartmentalize things. And when I felt hurt, I knew how to shut it down and just put it over here. And eventually, once there was too much over here, I would shove it down there. And so that ability to shut things down and to put walls up, it all came at a price, right? So here I was in midlife, realizing all that trauma, watching things in situations and failed relationships in my life flashing before my eyes. I knew something had to change. I knew something needed to be different. So this trip across country from Arizona to Kansas City, Missouri was full of reflection. And a part of that reflection was my mom and viewing her and the things that had happened through a whole new set of eyes. I knew she had suffered in midlife. I knew she suffered the majority of it in silence. I don't remember her talking about it. She had been a battered woman. Women of her age in that generation, probably coupled with my mom's very quiet, gentle nature, we just didn't talk about it. They just suffered in silence, and they definitely did not jump in their car and drive 18 hours to figure their shit out. But it did help me realize that the group of women I wanted to impact were midlife women. And I wanted them to know they didn't have to suffer in silence. I wanted them to know that there were resources out there that they didn't have available to us. We have available now. I wanted women to know that we're better off in community with each other and not as an island out there all by themselves. So I had my who and I had my why. Now I just needed my how. And that led me to my podcast, which I bring on incredible guests like Dr. Dawn and other women who are willing to share their story. They're willing to be vulnerable. They're willing to share their pivots, a lot of times pain, and how it helped them get to be where they are now. And I did that with the hopes that will inspire women to know that you're not alone. There are people out here who are, sometimes we feel when we hear a story about something someone else has gone through, all of a sudden it gives us permission to feel our feels, right? We're like, well, if she felt that way and she was able to turn that around, I think I can do it too. And so those are the kind of women I love to bring on my podcast. That oftentimes leads to women reaching out to me through our community on Facebook or through Instagram, and they reach out to me for coaching. And I have a coaching practice where I help women figure out their passions and purpose, which ultimately lead towards that fulfilling life that we all want. So let's talk about passions and purpose for a minute here. I am going to say something that's not very popular. My belief is not one shared by a lot of the gurus out there that talk about purpose. Their belief is follow your passions to your purpose. And I'm here to share my belief with you today that I have plenty of passions. I've had plenty before I took that long journey across the United States. None of them led me to my purpose. I am passionate about decorating. I love to decorate. I love to help my friends decorate. My stepson just closed on a home yesterday. We're going to head over there and I'm going to help him, make it feel like a home. I have a passion for making amazing pizza crust. I love to garden. I love to worm compost. I believe that, saving the bees is going to ultimately save human life. I have those beliefs are very strong, and I spend a lot of time and effort and lots of joy pursuing those things, but none of them led me to my purpose. So why did I tell you that long story about the journey to my purpose? Well, I hope you picked up on the fact that I was well into my 40s, well into midlife. I didn't even know myself. And so I believe that on the journey to your purpose, I think you have to have a strong self of who you are in order to follow your purpose. Here's what I work with women in the 12-week program that I offer. So number one is that deep, intimate knowledge of who you are. Who are you outside of your career? Your role as a mom, a grandma, a sister, a friend, a wife, a lover. What makes you feel alive? What stands in your way? What limiting beliefs do you have that have you stuck where you are? Number two, I help them define their values because, I had this statistic in my head there for a while and now I don't remember it, but there is a very small percentage of the population that really understand what their core values are. But they're important because we operate out of our core values, whether we're aware of what they are or not. And our behavior and our decision-making, they come out of those core values. So number three, I help them understand how they can use their strengths or identify their strengths in the first place. A lot of women do not know what their strengths are. In fact, I've had a few clients that I've had to say, ask your people closest to you what they see as your strengths, because they just don't know. They've spent so much of their life putting their needs aside, putting even sometimes their passions aside to raise their family, to pour things into their job or their career, and they don't know what their strengths truly are. So I help them uncover them. And ultimately, it's what are you so good at that you think the whole world must be good at it too, because it just comes so effortlessly to you. Number four, who do you want to serve? That's a big one. Is it the elderly? Is it battered women? Is it children? Do you want to help people who are illiterate? Do you want to help them learn to read? Maybe it's women who have been moms their whole life and focused on their families, and now they want to enter the job force. Do you have some strength that you can work with this group of women to help them re-enter the workforce at this stage in life? I heard a dear friend recently say that sometimes you find your purpose through pain. And she might be onto something, because if you've suffered some injustice in life or you've suffered something that's caused you trauma, you may feel very moved to help that particular group of people with that suffering. But here's what I want to leave you with today. Your passions are all about your desires, but your purpose is how you show up to serve others. And I heard Tony Robbins recently being interviewed on a podcast, and he said, you will never feel fulfilled unless you are giving of yourself to others. And a former pastor of mine once said that if he reflected back on the times in his life that he felt the most depressed, it was when he had turned inward and said, what about me? Instead of saying, where can I be useful to others? So if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. I'm sure we can provide ways to reach out to all of us at the end of this, but I would be happy to talk to you if you think coaching might be something you're interested in.
And how can, people can get a hold of you? What's your website, just for anybody who's watching now?
whatwomenwanttoday.com.
Okay, fantastic. So they can definitely reach you there if they want to get in touch with you.
Definitely.
And, I wanted to ask you a question.
Sure.
When you were talking about, about the challenge and having pain and having that, sometimes teach us and help us to reflect. Do you feel that that every pain, that every challenge we go through, that truly we can look at it and find something, not necessarily a reason why, because I don't think we always understand in our lifetimes why things happen, or maybe sometimes we realize this many, many years later. But do you feel that one can find that in anything if they really look for it?
I won't say everything, because I definitely have been, part of conversations where it just seems like there would be no way to find any kind of reason for that to happen. There have been, some very awful things that have happened to women I've worked with, but I would say that if you can look for something to take away from it, I think oftentimes, yes, we can find something to take away even out of the worst of circumstances. Yeah.
Okay, and is that something that you do when you work with clients and they come to you and they're distressed, or they're trying to understand what's happening in their lives now?
I would say, as a general rule, if you're still working through trauma, you're probably better off working with a therapist. If you've healed from the trauma and you want to move on from there, yes, that's when working with a coach can help. Because I heard it said once that when you work with a therapist, you're working on the past to make sense of your present. And when you're working with a coach, you're working on your present to make sense of your future. So
I like that.
Yeah. So, you need to come healthy and whole to work with a coach, because we're not trained therapists, for sure.
That makes sense. I understand what you're saying there. And the other question actually we have a question that's coming in, and that is, sorry, I'm just reading it now. Okay, so one of the questions that they're asking is, what advice do you have for women who feel that they want to make a change, but they don't know what they should do?
Yeah. I mean, that's the big question, right? I think number one, and this was something that I learned going through the John Maxwell certification program, you can't really grow unless you know yourself. You really have to be comfortable with every part of yourself, flaws and all, strengths and all. And, until you really do know yourself, it will be really hard to move forward. But that's where I would start. And it can happen through coaching. It can happen through journaling. I love brain dumps. I love, if you have, I have a group of women I do Marco Polo with. It's an app that you can download. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we just brain dump. And women, we do this very differently than men. Wise, you can probably weigh in on this one. But sometimes as a woman talking to my husband, I am figuring things out as I'm saying them out loud. Whereas my husband will have all this up here, and then he just, and I'm like, wait a minute, I think I missed something in that process, because I need to talk them out. So brain dumps, journaling, even on our phones, we have the little voice recorder. When I'm out for a walk, sometimes I just turn on the voice recorder and I start talking. So yeah, knowing yourself is probably the very first step. You're not going to get much further in your personal journey without really taking time to reflect on yourself and get to know yourself.
And and I wanted to ask another question as well, and that is, when you were, what do you feel like? Because I'm always talking to people about when you get to like a point, like there's a moment when you're like, okay, that's it. I can't do this anymore. I have to do something. You have that just kind of like awakening moment. So when you got in the car, when you drove, what do you feel like? What were you feeling at that time? What was that motivation, or what, were you scared and then you still pushed through it anyway? Were you just beyond it? Like, what can you describe what you felt?
Yeah, so I mentioned it a little early on in my story. What was happening with me, which I didn't know until later, was I was grieving. But we tend to only think about grief as when you lose someone, you lose a spouse, a parent, child, I was grieving my loss of that corporate job I had, because there was so much happening to me during those years I was with that company. I grew so much as a person. My level of confidence grew. I mean, I came from an abusive home. You don't come out of an abusive home too often with a great sense of self-confidence, but during that time, I grew so much. I wasn't given so much opportunity. I took advantage of opportunities presented to me. But that group that I helped form, I helped hire almost every single person in that call center. I had a hand in their training. I had a hand in their development. I managed them. I coached them. I befriended them. I was grieving the loss of that feeling that I was giving of myself to these people. I went in every day to work so happy to be there, so glad to be a part of that group of people. And I didn't know that what I was feeling was grief. And so when we moved to that little remote place and I had literally nobody, that's when I really started going inward to myself and saying, what's going on with me? I am so unhappy with every aspect of my life right now. The self-talk, the things I was saying to myself were not good. And so in some ways, when I hopped in that car, I was trying to escape myself a little bit. I wasn't really ready to face a lot of those things, but that was a really great journey. And I don't know that it would be the way that everybody would go about it, but it was definitely a way to quiet other things going on in my life and just be able to focus on what was going on with me.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. I think that sometimes people feel that they can't make a leap or make a jump until they've already solved everything, or they feel like they have to get everything, they have to be together. And I think that most of the time, honestly, we have a lot of change and growth that comes from those challenges and from, those problems, and not necessarily saying I have to be unafraid or I have to realize at this moment, everything what I'm going through and what that means. But I think rather it's a lot about people having those challenges and then just pushing through it and then getting to a point where they're like, I have no choice. I have to do something, you know? And it's, I think it's like looking at the situation happening right now in Ukraine, that there's so many people who, didn't wake up, 9 days ago and think I'm going to go create Molotov cocktails and throw them at tanks. It was the furthest thing from their mind, but they got into a situation and there wasn't time to decide if I'm going to be sad or worried or fearful about it. I'm just going to have to push through it in whatever way that looks. And, I know it's not easy because we all have our stories and the challenges, and we cannot compare because everybody is given the different challenges that they're able to face in their life, adversity as it were, which Wise is going to talk about in a minute. And through all of that, I think that what we're really looking towards, what we're really trying to understand is that we are none of us perfect, that we all have challenges, that we can't judge others nor judge ourselves in any of this, because we're just really meant to be doing the best we can. And that's part of that purpose of being here meaning being alive, is truly to become that best version of ourselves. And, I think that what we do is we work on it, and then hopefully we have others who are helping to raise us up as well. So, you're doing your part, Terri, by helping women and talking with them and giving them advice and letting them reflect and giving them the tools that they may need. And that's how we all help each other, right? To all get the tools that we need and to be able to rise up and to be able to not only become the best version of ourselves, but help others to do as well. Make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm really, really grateful for you being here today and for sharing your story. I know that's also not so easy all the time to share these topics. So thank you for that. And as I accumulate any other questions, and perhaps at the end, if we have more time, I'll be able to ask that of you as well. So thank you again. And now let's move on. So we have Wise who's with us today. I'm very grateful. I met Wise being able to do a podcast with him, and I was just so impressed with his ability to be open and vulnerable and speak about everything, and to be able to bring together people to share their stories. I know that since 2020, Wise has been working, doing his Stuck in My Mind podcast. Now he's got an entire internet radio station that he's doing, and just growing and being able to share stories, and having found his voice, being through so many challenges, and being able to allow other people, men and women, to come in and share their stories and to all learn and grow together. And I think one of the amazing things that happen when we, and I think maybe you guys agree with this, is that when we talk to other people, when we work with other people, it's like we're learning ourselves. Sometimes we're saying things that we know ourselves we need to hear. Sometimes we're hearing things for the first time that is allowing us to grow. But each time we hear stories and we share and we learn things, I think that's what's enabling us to really be able to grow together and to make ourselves even, that best version. I know that one of Wise's philosophy has been that he's just here on this process of growing and learning. And today, I'm so honored that he's here with us, and he's going to share some of his stories about adversity and growing from that. So welcome, Wise. Thank you for being here today.
Actually, thank you for having me. This is, like I told you before before we started, this is my first real speaking engagement, even though I am a podcaster and I do talk a lot. But I was honored that you asked me to come speak, and thank you. I appreciate it. We've actually become pretty good friends since this, and I'm blessed to have met you and have you in my life. And thank you for having me on.
Thank you for being here and your kind words. So I had you on because I believe in you, and I think you should be doing more of this. So let's share with everybody what you have.
All right. Well, so I'm gonna do it how I do with my radios, my podcast is welcome, and my name is Wize, Wise, and I am the host of Stuck in My Mind podcast. And I'm here to talk about overcoming adversity, and I'm probably one of the poster boys for it, with a lot of the things that have happened in my life. I was born and raised in East New York, Brooklyn, which is during that time, I was born in 1976, and during my lifetime in East New York, Brooklyn, it was not a very good place. It was probably one of the highest murder rates in all of New York City. And coming from that environment, especially being a young Hispanic man, you was either gonna go to jail or in the graveyard. And to be able to actually see my 21st birthday and not see jail and not be in the graveyard was something you is like, okay, wow, this is something. But then I met a woman, fell in love, moved to Florida, and was happy. We had a great life. And at the age of 31, she passes away in a car accident. And it devastated me. This is someone I grew up, spent half of my adult life with. And to lose her, it sent me spiraling. And I guess it's crazy, because I guess she was preparing me. Because during that time that I was with her, she introduced me to self-development, self-growth, and learning to be a better person. And because she had a beautiful heart and spirit, and so she was just preparing me for that moment. And but when I lost her, I lost a big part of myself, and I kind of don't remember my 30s. It was just out of a lot of things, a lot of self-medication, a lot of things that it was hard. And I'm still sometimes hard to talk about it, but this needs to be said. There's people out there that need to hear this, that need to know that no matter what goes on in your life, you can overcome it. And after I lose my wife, I reconnect with my father that I hadn't seen in 25 years. And after I reconnect with him, even a year right after my wife passes, I reconnect with him, get to know him for a couple of months. I go see him Father's Day. I go to Puerto Rico to visit him for Father's Day weekend. I get there Friday night. I get to tell him how much I love him and I forgive him and all this. And the next day he passes away. And so you can imagine, I'm still recovering from the loss of my wife. I reconnect with my father, lose him. So I'm angry. I'm all over, angry, sad. And so, like I said, a lot of my 30s I really don't remember because self-medication just was a very self-destructive path. I was blessed down, 2012, 2011, started getting myself back together, seek therapy, help. And 2013, I meet someone else and she helps me get back on my path to self-discovery and growth. And then it's just been, since I've been with her, I've completely turned my life around. I've been able to, I have a job I've been at for 8 years, doing a job that's simple and easy, and I get paid to play games. And so to be able to, there's so much more to the story, but we don't have that much time. So, but just to be able to meet again, fall in love again with a beautiful person. She's great and amazing. And to help refine myself and be able to get back on the path that I was intended on. And I don't know, I'm not a religious person, but I'm very spiritual, and I felt like everything I went through, it was meant for me to go through to be able to share this with people and be able to tell people, listen, whatever you go through in life, everyone goes through tough, rough situations, and you make good decisions, you make bad decisions, but there's people out there that can help you, and I'm sorry, this is like one of the first times I really get to share this story like this and be.
It's fine. Take your time. This is, like I said, this is not easy stuff that we're sharing.
Yeah, but it's needs to be shared because there's people out there, like you said, there's people in the Ukraine now that they're going through what they're going through, and it just shows you that life is precious. It's just, you don't know how much time you have here. So for me to go through what I went through, and I could have easily given up and just kept on the path that I was. But one day I woke up and I was like, I need to get help. I need to seek that help and seek therapy and started slowly but surely getting out of it. And like I said, when I met my wife now, she saw something in me that I didn't see, and she encouraged me to develop, to seek to get help and grow again and go back into self-discovery and reading and self-development. And it's helped me. And then you get hit with the pandemic, and I get furloughed from work, and now I'm home. Well, because she was still essential, she's still at work. I'm home now. I have so much time, and I have been wanting to do a podcast, but I'm still, you're still human. You still have doubts and fears, and I just kept making excuses to why I shouldn't do the podcast. So why? Who's gonna want to hear you? You're not Joe Rogan. You're not no one. No one's gonna want to listen to you. plus I made excuses. I said I sound horrible. My voice is horrendous. I probably sound like Shrek or something. And then, but one day I was like, you know what? I'm sitting here with my nephew. I just decided to press record, and Stuck in My Mind was born, because that's what had stopped me from wanting to do my podcast, was being stuck in my head and being stuck in my mind with all the fears and doubts and everything that you just accumulate through your lifetime. Just being able to press record and find my voice and find my purpose, because I didn't know. It was just like, I pressed record and it was like, now I don't shut up. Now I just talk and record. And so being able to just find my purpose, I would talk about, but she was talking about earlier, she was saying so many things that was just resonating with me so much. Everything she spoke about, I felt. I've experienced everything she was talking about. And I'm sitting here and I'm laughing, and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Like, she knows what I went through, because she's experienced it in her form, in her way. So it doesn't matter. Yeah, I'm a man and everything, and I'm from the era where you were told men don't cry, men are supposed to be strong. No, we're not. We're vulnerable. We're just like women. We have emotions. We just don't. It just seems. Men are they're ashamed. They're saying they're weak if they show emotions, if they cry, No, that's not. It's not a weakness. It isn't. And to be able to come out and share this and show that, yeah, you can be vulnerable. It's okay.
I think if anything, it's actually a strength to be able to do that and to be able to share, because one of the biggest challenges I think I have is when I have my clients I'm talking to, especially in couples counseling, is that women say, I wish my husband or boyfriend or partner would show more emotions, or would tell me what's going on, or would be able to, explain to me what he's feeling or communicate. And I think that a lot of times we don't realize that there are things going on that we don't know, because we may be expecting a different reaction. We may be expecting more vocabulary, because that's what we might do. We might be expecting, a different way of presenting it, and also timing. I think also what Terri was talking about before, women are very much like we're in the moment, we want to solve it, we want to figure it out, we just want to know right now. And I think men have more of the capacity to take time, to what we call cave, to sit, to reflect, to think about it, and then come up with how they want to present it, what their feelings are, and to be able to share it. It's not always, right off the cuff. And like you just said, Wise, is that a lot of times you have to fight through some of those social stigmas to be able to get to that place, where you allow yourself to have those feelings.
Absolutely. Definitely. And since I've started my podcast, I've been able to find my purpose. And it's crazy, because it's like, when Terri was talking, it was like, she's telling my story. She's like, because I didn't find my purpose till I was in my 40s. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that I was meant here to help people grow and develop, to help people. If one of my episodes can help one person with anything, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do.
Wise, that's exactly what I say too. If even one person is touched by something, I have to say, and you know what, you touched me today. When you were sharing that with me and you were being so vulnerable, it touched me, because you proved the point of what I said earlier, is if one person is going through it and they hear that other person telling that story, it's like, oh yeah, I'm not the only one. I'm not going through this all by myself. I'm not the only one who's experienced this. And then suddenly we feel a little bit braver about sharing it, you know? So thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much.
And you know what it is, Terry? When I first started, I didn't share my story. I had my guest on, but then I'm like, hold on, like I'm listening to everybody else's story, and I'm able to relate to a lot of, and I'm like, well, I need to share my story. I need to be able to let people know, listen, everyone goes through, everyone has a story. So that's why you can't really rush to judge anyone, because you don't know what they're going through.
That's right. And you know what, early on in my podcast, I did an episode on vulnerability, and I was like you, I didn't want to share too much of it all at the same time. I still haven't shared a lot of it because I didn't want it to be all about me, but at the same time, like you're saying, like if you're willing to put yourself out there, it gives other people, you know, that comfort of like, yeah, he's being vulnerable, I can be vulnerable too. And so, yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
And this is one of the basic human needs we have, is to feel connected to others, to feel that we're not alone, you know. And it's not a misery loves company per se, but rather it's you know, I need to know that somebody else has done this and somebody else has gotten through it as well. And so we like those inspirational stories when we see somebody that looks like us, and we say, oh my gosh, if they can do it, then I can do it. And I think that's one of the things that makes it so helpful for people to be sharing and to be talking. You don't have to have a degree or a license or any of those things. What you do have to have is to have that experience, to have grown from it, and to have that desire to want to share with other people and help them to grow from it as well. And when I give talks, when I work with clients, when I do retreats, all of those things, I find that people come up to me, and one of the things they share with me the most is they say, thank you for sharing your story with me. Thank you for telling me what you went through. Or I could relate, as Wise is talking about with Terry, and how he related, because it makes us feel that this isn't a story that somebody's just sharing that they've read from a book or something they've been educated on, but rather a real experience that we can take from. When I work with clients, especially around weight management, and they go, oh, I can't imagine you fat. And I say, yeah, check out my website and see when I was over 200 pounds. And they're like, oh my gosh, you know. But those are the things that, you know, it's one thing. I've been certified as a weight management coach, and that's just more technique of how to work with people and how to structure it. But what really works is to be able to sit down and say to people, yeah, I know what it's like to keep opening up the refrigerator and having the conversation like, I really shouldn't eat this, but I want to eat it. And I had a crappy day. Why shouldn't I eat it? You know, and all those other things that you don't know, they're not going to teach you in books until you've been through it, you know? And the having that, as I, you know, was talking with you, Terry, before about that moment when you're just like, okay, you know, when is that moment? When comes that moment? You know, and Wise, as you were talking about before, when you decided, I need to get help, I need to make a change, and somebody comes into your life and assists you as well, whatever those moments are, you know, until we finally say, okay, you know, that's it, I can't do this anymore. And so that, I think, is what is so helpful. And as Wise is talking about, how do we get through these challenges? I think it's a combination of not only our self-perseverance, those around us who come into our life that start making those changes, but also just digging deep down and finding something that we may not have realized was there.
You know, I think something else that holds people back is comparative suffering. You know, like, don't compare your suffering to someone else's. You know, if you had 200 pounds to lose, Dr. Dawn, but someone else only needs to lose 50, that doesn't mean that their wanting to lose 50 is any less valid. Or if I was, you know, I lived in an abusive home and it took me a while to figure out my purpose. It doesn't mean that if you weren't in an abusive home, you don't still struggle to figure out your purpose. Comparative suffering is, it's not useful. So you're entitled to your feelings, you're entitled to whatever you're going through, and don't let people talk you into not feeling entitled to that just because it's not as bad as somebody else's situation.
My suffering isn't more than anyone else's. It's my personal suffering. That's what I'm going through. It's not more than anyone else's, not any less. It is what it is for me. And to be able to overcome that, and now focusing on creating content that is to help people get through whatever they need to get through is like I said, it's being able to find my passion and my purpose in my 40s now, and loving what I'm doing now, and being able to help people in the process. It's a no-brainer. It's to me, it's something that I need to continue to do. This is something that I see myself, who knows, eventually becoming a coach. Who knows where this path will lead me to. But I know I am here to help people. And right now, that's what that's my podcast. That's here. That's why I speak to people like Dr. Dawn and everyone else I've had on my podcast.
Well, I just want you to know I'm getting a lot of responses, which are just a lot of hearts. So I think that's supportive right now that we're seeing. You know, Wise, one of the things I wanted to ask you was when you have been, and even now, I know that sometimes you have, you know, some of those insecurities or questions about, you know, should I be doing this? Are people listening? You know, what do you do in those moments? How do you push through?
You know what? I just go back to because you get, people send me messages. People tell me when they listen to hey, listen, I heard your episode. Thank you. I needed to hear that. I've had people reach out and tell me like, yo, listening to you and such guests, and they'll break it down to where in the episode that that's what I use to motivate me. That is what pushes me, is being able, like I said, if one person can get anything from one of my episodes, I'm good. I've done what I'm supposed to do.
And I think that one of the things that anybody listening now can take away from this is that we often feel like I was saying before, we have to have something perfected. We have to be 100% ready. We have to have everything, you know, just like it is. And I don't think that's necessary. And I don't think that necessarily should stop people, because I find a lot of people are stopping themselves from moving forward because they feel like it's not the right time, or everything's not perfect, or everything's in order. You know, what would you say to that, Wise?
Well, okay, so like I had purchased a Behringer studio, podcasting studio in 2019 with the intentions of starting a podcast. And it sat in my house collecting dust until I got furloughed in 2020. And it was just me making excuses to not, for why I didn't want to do it. And then finally me going, you know what? Screw it. Just kick fear and stop making excuses and stop delaying. Because honestly, you failed by not attempting. By me making up excuses and not doing the podcast, I had already failed. And so when I decided to finally press record and do the podcast, it's just a big weight just was lifted. Because, okay, yeah, if nobody listens, at least I attempted to do the podcast. At least I finally pressed record and stopped being stuck in my own mind and made excuses. Finally took that leap and did something that I wanted to do. And look, I'm having a great time. I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm meeting some amazing people. The networking that I'm doing through the podcast is amazing. You meet people from all over, from all walks of life. But what you start to realize is that those people have so much, you have so much similar with them as far as core values and stuff, that you're like, wow, like, I didn't understand why. You start to realize like everyone really wants the same thing in life. They really do. When it comes down to core values, a lot of me and my guests, we have a lot of the same beliefs. And you don't realize this until you really start, you're limited by your surroundings, but this has expanded my surroundings for me. This has expanded the people that I would connect with. So had I not started,
I think that's another example of where a negative situation became something very positive, because you lost your work. And probably at the, when you lost your work, you didn't go, you great, and then it took some time.
People can't complain, because at that time, that's when they were kicking over that extra incentive. They was kicking the extra bonuses and the unemployment and stuff from the government. But when I found out that podcasting is what I wanted to do, what I did with that extra money was invest in myself. Mm-hmm. I took coaching classes. I've taken editing classes. I've taken so many different courses that I've started. I invented it myself. I could have easily went and spent it on clothes and buy a car, whatever, some stupidness. And instead, I was like, no, I found something I love to do. I purchased the equipment that I needed. Because I felt that in order for me to improve, I had to improve my sound as well. My quality had to improve as well. So, like I said, I invested in myself. I purchased equipment that I wanted. I did my reviews. I just felt like this is what I wanted to do. Then go ahead and do it. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to invest in yourself. Don't be afraid to take that course that who knows what it might lead you to.
I love that.
You're number one. You should be your number one priority. Your self-development and growth should be number one. Mm-hmm. Because that's what we're here for. We're here to learn and grow.
You can't give them an empty cup, right?
Yeah, you can't. And like this, I forgot who said, but if you're the smartest person in the room, you're not in the right room.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not, because you're not going to grow and develop. And I'm all about growing and development and learning from whoever I have to learn from. So yes, like Terri said, if there's certain things a coach can help you with, then yes, you need to go seek therapy. That's what they get paid for. And men, for some reason, is society saying that we're supposed to be strong, and hey guys, you can go out there and get therapy. It's fine. If you're afraid because someone's gonna judge you, oh well. Again, your number one priority should be yourself. So get that therapy. Go out there, seek the help you need. Don't be afraid to admit that you're not perfect, that you're human. You're like everyone else. Everyone else is flawed. You need help. We're not perfect. That's why we're here to grow and learn and continue to grow and learn and develop yourself.
And if they want some podcast therapy, where can they hear that with you?
Oh man, check Stuck in My Mind podcast is on all major platforms. Check out my YouTube channel, Stuck in My Mind podcast. You can go to the website, www.stuckinmymind2020.com. Yeah.
Awesome.
You can also check out my radio station, which is www.realwiseradio.com.
Amazing. So you have a whole station now.
Yes, I have yes. And I'm always looking for on-air talent and musicians who are I made that platform for people who if you want to get into radio, want to be learn how to want to be a DJ or a radio personality, and you don't know how to get into that field, here, we're offering you that opportunity. If you're a musician or a band or whatever, if you have music that you want to get played, we're here for that. That's what we're here for. We're here to get people to play. Right now we have commercial music, but my ultimate goal is to have independent artists who don't have their stuff played on radio because they don't have the backing of the big corporate machines and stuff.
Love it. Amazing. And so it's all music then, this station.
Right now I have my friend Brian Snowman in the morning. He kicks it off from 8 to 10 with his show, which is sports talk radio. I'm looking for an official morning show. I would love to do it, but my day job calls, so I can't do that. But the ultimate goal is to have live programming, live DJs and stuff like that, and just give people an opportunity to let their voices be heard as well.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Amazing. Well, I'm so grateful for everything you shared. I'm going to just talk very briefly, and then leave open for any kind of questions or some discussion between us, and then and we'll see how long we take. So thank you again for sharing that. And so the only thing that I wanted to talk a little bit briefly on today, I think it kind of coordinates with everything we're talking about, with Terri talking about, our passion and being able to pivot and being able to find, what we want to do, whatever time it is in our lives. And then Wise talking about, the challenges and obstacles that we have to overcome in order to get there, and what that can look like. And so rightfully, as you see, everybody having their story, everybody having a journey that they have to go through, and talking about it and being able to share that, and knowing that none of us are alone in any of this process, whether it means we feel alone or whether we just understand that there are others that are going through what we're going through. And that's why I find it so helpful to have those podcasts out there where we can listen and we can hear everyone's stories, so that we know, wow, I can relate to that. It's not just me, or I understand what they're going through, and look, they've managed to survive it. So that gives me hope of my own survival. And so what I wanted to speak with briefly on today is about finding our voice. And when I talk about finding our voice, what I really mean to say is that many of us, and whether it be women or men, who sometimes feel that they're not going to be heard in some way. And I'm not saying that we all have to get up and start podcasts, though you can if you like. But one of the things that I think is so important is to be able to feel comfortable in being able to speak, to be able to say how we feel. A lot of times people are afraid to do that because they're afraid of being judged. They're afraid that people will laugh at them. They may be afraid that they're not confident enough in what they have to speak about. And a lot of times as well, people may be afraid in just personal relations to speak because they don't want to come off as aggressive, or as when women speak their mind, we're often called the B word because we're not allowed to be that direct, So a lot of this challenge comes from being able to have that confidence, being able to speak up from our place of empowerment, and to feel okay to be empowered. Sometimes we don't feel empowered because of people around us, who are telling us that we shouldn't be able to do those things, whether it's parents who sometimes are trying to guilt us, feeling that we shouldn't do something that they don't want us to do, whether it's partners who, again, may be narcissistic, may have their own challenges, want us to do what they want to do, or don't think it's correct, or will accuse you of being aggressive if you say your opinion. Can be in a workplace where we might be concerned or fearful that we'll lose our job if we speak up. It can be any kind of place and scenario where we're having a pressure from the outside, feeling that it's not okay for us to speak our minds. And so if there's anything I want to impress upon everyone today, is that we can speak our minds, and it's okay to speak from a place of empowerment. It's okay to share what you're feeling. But the way we do it is from a place of assertiveness. And there's three ways that we do speak. We have assertive speaking, we have aggressive speaking, and we have passive speaking. And I find that a lot of times people vacillate between passive and aggressive because they first try to get what they want through a passive way. When that doesn't work and the frustration builds up and they get upset enough, then they just flip right over to aggressive, and now they're yelling about what they want because they feel like they're not being heard in any other way. And they've skipped over the what we call in German we say goldene Mitte, which is like the golden middle, which is the perfect place, which is the assertiveness. So how do we look at that? First of all, aggressiveness means that we're trying to get something that we want and we don't care about anybody else's feelings. Aggressiveness means we're being loud. Aggressiveness means we're calling names. Aggressiveness is on the way to being abusive. And ask yourself, if saying what I want or need, does that make me aggressive? Does it mean that I'm hurting somebody else by saying it? When we do it passively, we're almost apologetic for the fact that we even had a desire or a want, right? We're like, I'm so sorry to bother you, but if you don't mind, and it's okay if you say no, and then we say it. You know, we've already given them an out. We've already apologized that we even had a desire. And this is extremely passive. It's just inviting people to already say no, walk over us, not listen at all. And so when we are being assertive, what we're doing is we're saying what we want and need in a respectful way. We're just sharing our thoughts and our desires with people. We're explaining it in a way that we're calm. We're being straightforward. So we're not trying to get things through a manipulation, which goes down into passivity, where many people are familiar with the term passive aggressive, where some people might be, or just being passive, as I explained before. And through that, we find that we have this whole host of challenges. When we're so passive, we might become people pleasers. When we're so passive, we might just want to make everybody else happy. When we're so passive, we may say, everybody else's happiness, as long as everyone else is happy, I'm fine. You know, and when I work a lot of times with people who have relationship challenges, they'll say to me, well, I don't understand, you know, what happened, because, you know, I never asked for much. And I say, oh, bingo, you got exactly what you asked for. They say, ask for nothing, and then you got nothing. So the fear of being assertive brings them to a place where they don't get anything that they want, and they're too afraid to. Now, the other challenge also with being passive and not being able to be assertive is that some people have learned, whether it be from their parents or other situations, to just manipulate in order to get what they want, because they're too afraid to ask for it. So they'll put people into a situation or describe something in such a way so that they're hoping the other person might eventually offer it, or to try and guilt them into doing it by try to make them feel badly if they don't do what they're being asked. And so these are not the healthy ways of communicating. And if you recognize that this is being done to you, then this is part of where you have to be able to be assertive enough to set those boundaries and say, I'm not comfortable with that. And then we go to the other side of things, aggression, which often comes out when we're giving ourselves permission to speak in an unkind way, to talk loudly, to be disrespectful, to try and push our power onto somebody else. And oftentimes this happens not because people are innately aggressive, though some people do have, you know, anger management challenges, but oftentimes we find that majority of people will go to these tactics because they feel that they're not being heard. And that's really what everybody wants, is just to be heard. And it can be challenging when we're communicating because it's not necessarily going to be listened to. We're not necessarily going to be heard when anyone feels that they're being attacked and have to defend. So when we get aggressive and the other person is now looking for ways to defend, they're not at the same time in one ear thinking, okay, how am I going to defend myself? And in the other ear thinking, oh, but she makes a really good point. I should really listen to this. That's not happening. That's never happening when we're yelling. So aggressiveness is not our way. It's not the technique, but we don't have to be fearful that being assertive means being aggressive, because we know what that difference is. We know when we're being disrespectful, when we're yelling, when we're screaming, when we are threatening. Now we're no longer in assertive. So what is assertiveness? Assertiveness really is being able to be firm, but be respectful, being able to express our needs and to be able to say it in a way that's non-offensive. When we are keeping our eye contact, when we are standing or sitting with good posture, when we're speaking at an appropriate volume, when we're relaxed and calm, all of these things from the way that we move our bodies is very important to describe how we are assertive. Because when we are aggressive, when we've got clenched fists, and a lot of times I laugh because I'm watching things, videos, and I see people talking and they, got their hands folded and they're looking like this, and I'm thinking, this person is obviously not listening. But the other person just keeps going on and on and on, and now they're getting more upset and they're leaning forward and their hands are clenched, and their eyes are like this. Whatever's happening, you see, all of these things lead towards that aggressiveness. And if we want to find our voice, if we truly want to be heard, right, then we want to be heard in a way, that makes people open to be listening. So when you think about your assertiveness, when you want to find your voice, when you want to speak up, then I want you to think about how I can do this. I'm going to do this in terms where I'm going to speak clearly, I'm going to speak honestly, I'm going to speak respectfully, and know that I have a right to share how I feel. Now, nobody has a right to judge if my feelings are valid or not. We should always be validated. Now, the other person doesn't have to understand what I'm feeling. They don't have to agree with what I'm feeling, but they do have to validate that I'm having those feelings. And that's where that ends. And so that's in our personal relations. Now, when we're talking about something outwardly, when we're talking about finding our voice, talking in front of people, having people listen to us, being able to feel comfortable, not being worried about other people's judgment of ourselves. In those terms, I say, stay very present. When you're going to talk, when you're going to be in a space where other people are going to be listening, you don't have to know everything. You don't have to know it perfectly. I've been doing this for over 15 years now, and still sometimes I get questions that I honestly don't know the answer to. And I'll say, that's a great question. Let me get back to you later. There's no need to feel that you have to have all the knowledge all the time to be able to speak. You don't have to. None of us know everything. So it's okay to talk about what you know, what you feel comfortable with. When you start thinking about what other people might be thinking, let me tell you a couple things. One, most people are so concerned with themselves that they're not thinking about you. They're thinking more about their own selves, how other people are thinking about them or what's going on with them. So you can take that to the bank, that most of the time they're not thinking about you, they're worrying about themselves. Second of all, when you are thinking about what others may think, then I invite you to come back and be in the present moment. Because now what we're doing is we're having irrational thoughts. We're guessing, we're judging, we're wondering what other people are thinking. We're oftentimes making up a whole scenario. Oh, they looked at me this way. This is what they must be thinking about. Oh, they made that kind of sound, or they tilted their head that way. Often, sometimes these are things that are triggers from our past, because maybe our parents looked at us that way, or a teacher, or somebody we were in a relationship. And so now it's triggering this assumption of what others may be thinking. So instead, come back to the present moment. Be in this moment where you are right now with all of your senses. I'm sitting here, I'm talking, I'm holding my cup of tea, I'm drinking my tea. What does it feel like? Just come back into this moment. Because right now, as Wise was explaining before, you're stuck in your mind, right? You're up here. You're not here physically because you're worrying about something that you don't have any evidence of. So when we have the irrational thoughts, we have to ask ourselves, do we have any facts to prove this? And this is our number one question to ourselves. if I'm looking at somebody and I'm thinking that they're thinking I'm stupid, or this group is going to think I don't know what I'm talking about, or I'm worried that they're going to judge me, do I have any facts for that? And if not, then I have to again come back to the present. I don't have any facts. I have to stay present. I have to stay focused on what I'm doing right now. Second of all, do I have any facts to prove the opposite? So is there anything that I can prove that is the opposite? Like, well, there's a group of people here and they're listening to me and they're not getting up and leaving. You know, there's nobody who's standing here right now yelling at me and telling me I'm stupid. So are there any facts that are proving it? Are there any facts that are proving against it? I have no facts that are proving that what my fears are true, but I have other things around me that prove the opposite. People are here, they're listening, we're talking, people are smiling at me, there are other people who are nodding their heads. So try to focus on those things that we have in that moment. So do I have a fact? Do I have a fact against it? And coming back to the present, because I'm not going to focus on things that I have no proof of, or assuming, or worrying. I have to stay in this present moment to avoid that worry. So these are some of the tips about being able to speak up, being able to find our voice, being able to resist that urge to give in to the fear and concern and worry about others. Now, one other thing I want to share with you is more from an energetic level. And that is often, I'm going to take a sip first. Often we have a challenge with our voice. And because of that, that creates a block here, physically, in what we call the throat chakra. There are several different chakra points in our body, more than we can go over in the scope of this conversation today. But the throat chakra, right? This is what connects us to our voice. It's what allows us to be speaking. It's the energy that is constantly circulating. And when we have a problem finding our voice, when we have a problem speaking up, we can have physical challenges in that area, thyroid issues, constant tonsillitis. We can have colds where we're constantly losing our voice, losing our ability to speak. So be aware of what's happening around this area and know that this is really where we project out that energy, right? When we talk about, oh, the words got stuck in my throat. What does that mean? There's a block here. And these energy points do get blocked. And what we don't realize as humans is that we've always known about this. We've always known about the different chakra points, but we haven't always put them into practice. And so much have we known about it that it's become a common vernacular when we speak. We often say things like, oh, I was really upset I had to get something off my chest. Well, why do we say off our chest? We say that because this is our heart chakra. This is where our feelings and emotions come from. We could have said, oh, I'm so upset I got to get something off my elbow. We don't say that. We say chest because that's where it is. We often say things like, oh, what should I do? I don't know. I should trust my gut. Well, why do we say trust our gut? Because our gut is here in the solar chakra area, and that is where we have decision making from. This is where our brain is, our second brain is, where we make good decisions from, where we decide, what is right, what is wrong, where our ethics are. It sits there in our gut area. And so that's one of the reasons why we say it. We could say, oh, just trust your liver. That's not what we say, because that's truly where the chakra point is. So you see, if you just recognize, even from our own speech, that this is something we've always known, but we've moved away from it. So since we're talking about finding our voice, we're talking about the throat chakra. We're talking about being able to open up. We're talking about being able to speak our truth. And so when we do that, we understand that the throat chakra is something that gets stuck, it gets blocked, and we need to open it. And so very briefly, what are some things we can do to open it? First of all, the throat chakra vibrates. If you've ever seen a chakra chart, you see it's the colors of the rainbow, because this is how we function on different wavelengths, right? So the throat chakra here, which is going up to one of the end chakras here, is blue, right? Light blue, aquamarine blue. So eating things that are blue, looking at things that are blue, carrying blue crystals with us, all of these things can actually open your throat chakra, because vibrationally, it's changing our energy and our vibration, because things of that color vibrate at that frequency. That's how we see colors. We see it by the vibration, the frequency of the wavelengths of that color. right? So you've got little red wavelengths and orange and yellow and green and blue and violet until they get to ultraviolet, which our eyes can't even see at this point. But you see, we're absorbing those frequencies, and it's changing how we are. That's why some people will look at certain colors that they're drawn to it and will help make them feel better. And sometimes we use light therapy in these ways where we look at the different colors and we're absorbing that into our being. Sometimes if you're meditating and you're not feeling well and you just sit there and you imagine a light shining on you, maybe a color comes into your mind, a blue, a red, a green, a yellow, all of that coming because that's the color that you may need to be vibrating in harmony with at that moment. So we have this color, and we understand that as I said, you can see the color, you can eat the color, you can wear the color. Anything that brings that color to you is appropriate to help to open up your chakra point. Also, you can, like I said, have crystals such as aquamarine blue crystals. You can sit it on your throat, you can just have it in your hand, doesn't matter. They're always vibrating in that same frequency. The mantra that is associated with the throat chakra is hum. So if you sit and you want to open up the throat chakra, you can be saying hum. Now, you can just sit and do that as a meditation. You can do it while you're driving, you can do it in the shower, you can do it while you're pooping. I don't care. But as long as you're vibrating in that frequency and using that word, that will help as well to open it up. So the other thing is smelling, right? We can smell to open up the throat chakra. We can smell using aromatherapy, things such as rose smell or frankincense, sandalwood, jasmine. These are all good essential oils for opening up that throat chakra. As I said, eating, what can we eat? Well, what's blue? Blueberries, things that are actually blue. So I'm not talking about like Mountain Dew blue, exotic, whatever craziness they have out there, or anything like that, using real natural blue things. So blueberries, blackberries, even there are apples vibrate into the same color, plums, which are kind of blue purple. So anything of a natural color that is in that range and that frequency of colors. And lastly, one of the things we understand about the throat chakra is what are the emotions that are attached to it. And the throat chakra, first emotion is shyness, right? So when we're shy, when we don't want to speak up, our throat chakra closes, right? So it's shyness we have, being withdrawn, anxiety. If we say something that's untrue, if we're lying, our throat chakra closes up. And even on the opposing side, even though you think about that it's your ears, but if we're not listening, our throat chakra closes up, which is very interesting. If we don't listen, our throat closes. So it's all interconnected. And so when we are working towards this process, not only can we implement some of the tools I described, but we can also use these energy work as well to help open up that throat chakra, because our bodies are always body, mind, and spirit. All three are connected and you cannot disconnect them. So even if you're physically feeling closed up, you're mentally closed up, you're spiritually closed up. So we have to work on all three in order to find that balance and to learn how to open up and find our voice and to be heard and to speak. So I hope that anybody listening today will try to take advantage of this in order to work towards being able to open up your throat, being able to speak your truth, not having that concern. And even if you're fearful, you can be fearful, but you push through it anyway, because bravery is not the absence of fear. Bravery is being afraid and doing it anyway. Because if you have no fear, then you would be what we would label as psychotic. So you don't need to be psychotic to speak your truth. So it's important to have fear, but it's also important to not let it stop you. So I do see there's one question that was posed that I'm going to answer right now, and that is about fear of public speaking and some ways to get around that. So as I discussed, some of the ways to push through by being present, by thinking, about what I'm focusing on at the moment, to ask ourselves, is the fear that I'm having about what other people may think about me, is that in any way something that I can factually show is true, or in any way that I have proof against it that that's not true. And if I'm spending too much time on these assumptions or this irrational fear, how can I come back into my present state? The other thing I would recommend is if you're truly in that moment and you're feeling very panicky, one of the things we can do, and obviously you would do this before you got onto stage or in front of people, and that is the 3-fingered breathing exercise that I use for anxiety, that those of you who've done prana work in yoga may be familiar with. Prana, which is the Ayurvedic word for chi, which in Asian language we call chi, which is that energy of the universe that comes in to clear our body. You would take your 3 fingers like this, and you would take your thumb and you would close one nostril. You would take your second pointer finger and you put this here, which is actually our 3rd eye chakra, which is the chakra of what we listen to for intuition, our connection to higher self. And then we take the 3rd finger here and we put it on this nostril in tandem with the thumb, so not at the same time or we can't breathe. So this is what we do. We close like this, and we breathe in one side, and we close the other, and we breathe out this side. And we switch again. Now we're breathing in this side, and we close the other, and we breathe out this side. And we do this about 10 times. And really quickly, the reason we do this is because 1, we're breathing in deeply, and we're breathing out, and everybody knows that's relaxation. Right? The more oxygen we bring into the body, the more relaxed we are. The second reason we do it is because we're switching left and right. We're syncing the 2 hemispheres of our brain. And the more we sync the hemispheres of our brain, the more relaxed we're going to feel. So we're switching left and right. We're also going to be more connected. We're going to be more centered, because now we're using the left and the right side together. Because often we're only using one side at a time. So now we're switching right, left, right, left. And the third reason we do it is because you're going to be so busy trying to figure out which way I just breathed in and out that you don't have time to be worried about what people are thinking. So that's the third reason. So like I said, these are some good tools that you can use if you're feeling anxious about talking or being in public speaking, or even before you have a conversation with somebody you need to be assertive with. I hope that is helpful. That answers your question. Okay. So that being said, I just wanted to open up and I see if there's any more questions that are coming in live, but also to our guest speakers today, I wanted to just ask if you could share anything, because this is, for International Women's Day, if there's anything that you wanted to share that you feel is one of the most important things, let's say, that women can take away today, just focusing on whether it be in relation to communication with men, whether it be being able to speak up on their own, whether it be about their own lives and their journey, what you've seen or experienced. Terri, is there anything that you would like to share today?
Well, I was thinking when you were talking, I've worked with you on different occasions, and I didn't know you did the chakra work. So can you tell us a little bit more about how you work with people on the chakras? Because I know a couple of women who've been talking about this, and I didn't have a direction to point them in. So
Oh, sure. Well, understanding the chakras is basically, and I'll do this very briefly, but the chakras are the ancient energy points of our bodies. And we have all these different areas of organs that are lumped together, right? You have your brain here where you're thinking, and you have your throat where you're speaking, your heart where you're feeling, and our stomach where we're making decisions and digesting, going all the way down into our root chakra, whereas the basis, of all the energy that flows, and the energy that comes into our body, because we do get energy from the universe, it comes down one side and it goes up the other. And so if we understand chakras, what we really have to understand when working with individuals is that chakras are opening and closing all the time, right? Our whole body is always in flux. It's always moving around. And when we have challenges, then it often means that one or more of our chakra points is really just blocked and has closed up. And when it's blocked and closed, you have to imagine that energy is flowing like water. So if the water trickling down is like a waterfall, and somewhere there's some garbage and the garbage collects and it builds up, and now you've got it all blocking the area. Wise knows what I'm talking about because he and I are from New York. where there's all kinds of stuff floating in water there. Maybe a body, who knows? But
Who knows what you're
so
finding out, Terri?
whatever's floating has gotten stuck. And now this garbage is stuck and it's not allowing the rest of the energy to flow, or very little bit is trickling through. So even though, let's say, your throat chakra may be blocked, that may be blocking the ability of the energy to get to your third eye chakra or to your crown chakra, or vice versa. So what we do when we're working with people is to understand where are their blocks, what's happening right now, and how is that affecting them. And not only is it affecting them energetically and emotionally, but it's also going to affect them physically. Because as I said, body, mind, spirit, you cannot separate them. So a lot of times people will come to me and they'll say, I've been having, terrible stomach aches. Here's a good example, right? You have somebody who has like an IBS, right? Irritable bowel syndrome, right? We all know that this is majority being caused by stress. We're having stress and we're holding that stress in our stomach. A lot of us do. That's the place where we feel stressed. We get upset and then we can't eat, or in my case, you eat too much, or you get stressed out and you feel like you want to throw up, you get upset, or wherever you hold it. And now you're holding that stress. What is it doing? It's building up toxicity. And the toxicity is then creating negative environment. And that buildup of constant stress, constant worry and fear is expressing acid into your stomach. And now that acid, could even ulcerate your stomach. Now you have an ulcer, or you have this IBS where your bowels are releasing, or you even have, for example, what we have here there's a hiatal valve here that's closing and opening right before where the stomach is reaching into our throat. And if you look at it, if too much acid builds up, then this hiatal valve will actually become loosened, and now the stomach starts to push up through, and now we've got reflux and all sorts of issues like that. And if it's too much, they'll have to go back in and actually sew your stomach back down, because your stomach has become herniated. You have a hiatal hernia at that point. So a lot of these challenges, physical, emotional, they're all tied together. So if we understand that stress can be so bad that it can actually create an overproduction of acid in our stomach when our stomach's empty, that then creates holes in our stomach, then why can we not understand that we could use our mind to then heal ourselves as well? We're very quick to understand that we can hurt ourselves with our mind. We're not always so quick to believe we can heal ourselves. So when individuals work with me, we try to understand body, mind, spirit, what's going on in your life right now, and where are the areas we have to focus on, and how do we bring those chakra points back into balance and try to keep them open and flowing. Now, when we have a moment, and I really mean this for sure as a moment, where all chakra points are in alignment and open at the same time, this is what we call nirvana. And I've had it twice for about 5 seconds, and it was amazing for 5 seconds. But this is, this moment of just having it all open at the same time. And there's work we can do in order to make that happen. So anybody who needs to learn about their chakra points, to understand how they function, how they open, and to become more aware of what's happening within them and how to, again, work through them. As the examples I gave today with the throat chakra, if somebody really focuses on these things and does the work to be vibrating in harmony to release it and open it, as well as doing some of the physical work that we have to do, those exercises in order to speak up and speak out, then everything will be in balance again. And it's just a matter of working through that and finding which ones are yours that are blocked and how to then in turn reopen them and align yourself and keep them open as much as possible. So thank you for your question.
So just one thought that I had
Sure.
while we were talking today is, now when I say women, I obviously am just stereotyping a little bit, but I would say that when you spoke a little bit earlier about people pleasing, it struck a chord with me, because I have been a people pleaser almost my entire life. And I think that that particular group of women would probably have a little bit harder of a time connecting with their purpose than maybe other women who aren't people pleasers. So, there's this belief out there that you only have one purpose in life. And I don't think that's true. That's not my belief. And I think I would encourage women who are just so overwhelmed by the idea of seeking a purpose that you're not tied to it just because you choose a path. Wise and I are not tied to podcasting as our way of serving people for the rest of our lives. We can do this for however long it feels like we're serving that purpose. And then there might be another purpose that we move on to from there. So, if you're unsure, I would encourage women, just try some on. Start somewhere, start anywhere, just start. I mentioned a few earlier, but my husband volunteered in our previous location. We just moved, but in our previous location, he served by showing up at the food pantry every week. And they had a consignment shop next door where they would take the furniture that they sold and they would use the money to purchase food for the food pantry. Well, his purpose for that time period was moving furniture. He was helping serve the community by lifting heavy things that other people like me can't lift. So I would say try on a purpose. Go out there and just do something that's serving other people, and it might lead you to another purpose. You might meet somebody in that process that says, oh, I do this, and then it might strike something within you to try that as well. And the other thing I would say is don't get stuck in your story. We all have a story that we tell ourselves. And, I remember when I was first starting out in my coaching, I made a mistake that I think a lot of coaches do, and that is coaching someone who didn't ask for it. And so there was a relative of mine who I didn't know very well, but we sort of connected on Facebook. And I noticed a pattern after connecting with her, all of her posts were about things that had happened to her in her past. And, I said to her, hey, I think you need a new story. I think you keep playing the same recording over and over in your head. And I think what we need to all realize is that we're the author of our story. So if you don't like all the past chapters, guess what? You get to write the next ones. So don't stay stuck in your story. Realize that you do have the power. And as Dr. Dawn was saying, use your voice to create the next part of your story. And I think that's just the things that I was thinking about as you were talking.
Oh, I love it. Thank you. I mean, that was really just beautifully put. And I can't agree more. I think that it's so important for people to, and it's kind of what I talk about when I'm counseling, is I say, okay, yeah, those things happen, and we can figure out, what happened and how it affected you, but let's not spend that much time on it. Let's take now and move forward, because we so often repeat that story and, like you say, get stuck in it, and then it becomes just who we are, and who we were doesn't have to be who we're going to be. So I love that you shared that. Thank you so much. That's really great. So Wise, tell me, my friend, what can you share today?
Oh man, watch what you say to yourself. That's something very big that people don't realize is your words are very powerful. So you need to watch how you speak to yourself in particular. Like when you're there like, oh, I'm stupid or I'm dumb, those things affect you. Those things make you, those are some of the biggest things that's one of the biggest things people do is not pay attention to how they speak to themselves and really that was something with me, as like I said, it was, why would people want to listen to me? Why would I sound hideous. Who would want to listen to me? And I had to really realize, like, no, I'm pretty good. I can do this. People do want to listen to me. So yeah, just be careful how you speak to yourself, really, and just don't be afraid. Just go out, and if you want to learn how to play the guitar, go out and learn how to play the guitar. If it's something that you've always wanted to do, but were afraid to do it or attempt it, or go ahead, take that leap. Or what's the worst thing can happen? Mm-hmm. You're not gonna know if you're successful at it or you're getting good at it if you don't try it. If you sit on the sidelines and don't do anything.
I love that. And I think that, I mean, it's something I teach a lot in my practice, is about self-speak, being able to pay attention to how we're speaking, focusing on that, being able to change that, because so many times we don't even recognize the things we say. Just societally, there's so many things where people just say, oh, I'm so stupid, oh, I'm an idiot, oh, you know, and they don't even necessarily hear themselves doing it. And as Wise was saying before, about making excuses sometimes about things, oh, you know, whatever our reason is, oh, it's too late, I'm too old, I'm this, I'm that, whatever excuses we make up, you know, that's just a way of avoiding the situation. And you know, my philosophy and what I always share with my clients is that the only way that you can possibly fail is if you give up. As long as you don't give up, there's no way you can fail. And that means it may not look like you want it to look. There may be some setbacks before you get to what you want, but you're really truly not going to fail unless you stop trying. That's pretty much the only way that you can. And failure doesn't mean not having things go exactly the way you want. It means being able to be malleable. And sometimes it means that we make changes or things look a little bit differently than what we had first expected. But it doesn't mean that we stop trying and that we give up, because then we're 100% going to fail. There's no doubt about that. So I'm just looking, I was leaving some extra time in case we had some questions, but I think the questions have been asked as we went along. So I think we'll wrap up a little bit early. But I want to make sure that everybody who's watching this now knows that I will post this video onto different areas for people to find. I'm also going to send a copy to the guests as well, so that they can post where they like, so you can watch it at your leisure. If you have any questions, please send them to me. I'm also going to make sure that all of the contact information is available. Should you want to speak with Terri or talk to Wise, you know, whether you have some challenges you want to work through, you have some music you want to share, you have some things you want to discuss, all possibilities that we have open today. And I just want to wrap up by saying, you know, really, truly how grateful I am for the time that, you know, both Terri and Wise have shared with me today. I value so much their opinions and their thoughts, the beautiful work that they're doing out in the world today. And I'm just so happy to have met two wonderful people who I know are doing their part to make the world better. Whether my puppy agrees, thank you for your agreement. You know, for everyone, she's a girl, so she's finding her voice right now too. So, but just, I think that it's not any way, you know, the amount, you know, of people we reach or what we do or how, you know, we're trying to find that. It's about just anybody's life. I don't care if you're walking down the street and you smile and you make someone else smile. That's great. You've done something. So I find them very inspirational. And I just want to say thank you again to both of you for being here today.
Thank you again for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to kind of pop my cherry.
Well, glad that we could do it amongst friends. So thank you, everybody. And thank you, everybody who's been joining live. And thank you for everybody who's watching the recording. Again, I will post everything later for you to see, and you'll have an opportunity to connect with anybody afterwards. So thank you so much. Take care. And I hope actually on Tuesday, when it is, you will celebrate with women that you love for International Women's Day. Thank you again. Bye, everybody.
Bye.